Passionate and giving are two words that best describe our guest today. An education enthusiast, she has risen to heights unimaginable in the education sector internationally. Still, she gave up all for the love of our country. You'll meet her after this break. This is the Sunday Interview. I'm Jokeli Jadu. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest today is an education enthusiast. She's a professor of business and rector of Abiola Awosika School of Innovative Studies, OASIS. She rose to become a vice president of Montreat College, North Carolina. Not to forget, she's the daughter of a former minister of finance in Nigeria. She is Professor Abiola Awosika. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let me ask you, who is Professor Abiola Awosika?
She's this easygoing, simple, people-loving person, born in Nigeria, proudly so, and daughter of Chief F.O. Awosika, Festus Olaoyin Awosika, a politician in the First Republic. Someone who we're proud to say was known to have seconded the motion for Nigeria's independence and also to have proposed the idea for free primary education to the action group back then. So I come with a very rich heritage and proud of it.
So let me ask you, what was growing up like for you? I know that your dad, may so rest in peace, died when you were about 10. And what was life like before and after that?
Before, silver spoon in your mouth kind of life. After that, pull yourself by your bootstraps kind of life. But the foundation that we were given, supported by our mom, actually got us prepared to pick ourselves up and be all that we can be.
Let's talk about growing up. Who are some of your earliest influences? Who are some of the people that you would say, while growing up, had made one or two impacts on your life?
Actually, if I was to name two, my mom would be the first one, and then I would say, after I gave my life to Christ, then Christ would be the one. So, yes, there are people that I've admired, but the people that have actually formed who I've become are my mom and the power of my Lord Jesus.
So away from lecturing and teaching, how do you relax?
I sew.
Wow.
And I read a lot,
I can see that. Then how else would you become a professor if you don't read?
I know, and actually I love reading non-academic books. I have at least 2 or 3 fictional biographical books going at the same time, depending on whether it's hardback or it's on my tab and so I love dancing and singing. So you can see that I love this country.
I can see you like groove.
You know, because, you know, we're happy people, we have fun, and all of those things, you know. I actually craved them when I was,
that's
you know,
good.
outside
Very
the
interesting
country.
hobbies. So let me ask you, you know, you talked about all these things, like, how about sports? Do you like any form of sports? Watching, playing?
I can sit down and have a good conversation around soccer. You know, because my brothers, you know, they talk about soccer all the time.
Okay.
And so I can say, you know, so whose team is winning? What is Arsene Wenger doing these days?
Oh, okay.
You know? But that's about it. And if Nigeria is playing, or if there's a team that I like playing, I could sit down and watch a bit of it.
Okay.
I'm not a very...
But not in participatory.
No, not really.
Let's talk food for you. Say we wanted to thrill you with a dish. What would that dish be? Local, international, what would it be?
Local would be what my Ondo people call kwekule.
That's the first time I'm hearing that.
Now, kwekule is just beans with corn, and you know, just like what you cook it with corn
really?
from the start. And I just quit. I'm never satisfied.
Wow.
But I just quit because it's like it's enough.
Oh, really? That's really nice. Okay, that's very nice. So tell me, how did your love for teaching, how did your love for education, how did it start? How did it begin?
So I kind of grew into it. Well, when you have a PhD and you're not thinking, okay, maybe I want to go to Wall Street or whatever. The next thing probably is, you know, I'm going to teach. And it turned out that this love for teaching is innate, because after we did some research on our father's life, we found out that that was his first love. He had started a free primary school in Ondo town, and he funded it himself. He was headmaster. And then he also taught at Government College Ibadan. His nickname was FOG, you know, FO geometry, because he taught mathematics. And so it just became obvious where that gene came from. And teaching at university level was very encouraging to me, because you get the students at a time when education is not just mom and dad says go to school. It's at a time when you know this thing is going to be good for me, for my future. And so all of the experience with my students, my colleagues, just opened my mind to what could happen, especially potentially for this country. And so, and knowing, and I say this all the time, that the level of development of a nation is inextricably linked to the level of education of her people.
Yeah, obviously.
And so when I look around and I see a struggle, and I'm thinking everything that's wrong with us has a solution in education. The plumber that does not plumb well, it's education. The tiler that does not tile straight, it's education. He didn't get the training. The kid that doesn't write well. And so communication, even just understanding your civic responsibilities is education.
Now, despite the initial challenges that you had, you know, after your dad died, you braced the odds and you were determined to make something out of yourself. How were you able to do that?
My mom would always say something. She would say, education is the only way I know that gets people out of poverty. And she had 9 of us. And she promised each and every one of us that if it's the last wrapper on her, she would sell it to make sure that we all got an education. So when she died, that kept ringing in my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, if mom thinks this is the way out of poverty, then I'm gonna get an education up to where, in my kids' mind, up to where you could
think about, like, the very height of it.
At the top, you know. And so every time I made progress, I'm thinking, okay, there's still another level to go. Yeah, you know, there's still another level to go. You know, I don't think Mom would like me to stop until here. So, and that sort of kept me going.
Now you became a professor at 38, and that's very young. I don't know, when you want to look at the kind of age where you become a professor in Nigeria. Do you think that if you were in Nigeria at that time, you would have been able to be?
Probably not. Because I was going to say, yeah, it was, you know, it happened because it happened in the U.S. And in the U.S. you have your guidelines, what you have to do to become a professor. You have to publish so much. You have to teach so much, so well. You have to do community impact, you know, so much. And if you did that, you got it. So I cannot understand the delay in the Nigerian system, but I have to hand it to them that that's the way they do it, and that's the way it is.
Now, despite all your achievements, you know, while in the U.S., you were close to the presidency of your school. You were vice president of Montreal College. You chose to leave all that to come back to Nigeria. The system had paid off for you. Why did you come back home?
When you get to a point, it goes beyond. I wake up in the morning and I go to work, and I come home and I sleep, and I wake up in the morning and I go to work. You get to a point where you're thinking, I can make more impact, not better, but I can make more impact in a place that does not have all the resources that the United States has. The things that we need as a nation compared to what one would need to change a life in a place like the US or the UK, they're so small. It's not to diminish what it is, but you make a lot of difference with little. And so I figured if I could make this much difference here, where they have all the resources at their disposal, imagine how much of a difference I could make in Nigeria and possibly even Africa as a whole. And so it made sense for me to come back to where I came from.
So it's about 8 years since you came back finally. It's about 8 years. Would you say that you have any regrets, you know, coming home, seeing, you know, the system and everything? Would you say you have any regrets?
No regrets. It's difficult, but when you've made up your mind that this is where I want to be, and God backs you up, then you can overcome or surmount any obstacles. I go overseas from time to time. I go back to the US. In fact, my last trip, I went back to North Carolina, and I drove around and I asked myself, would you come back? And the answer is no. I would come visit, but I don't think. Now, never say never. You never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
You know, but right now, where I am, the way I feel psychologically, I don't think I will go back.
Well, we're going on a short break, and when we come back, we'll still be speaking with Professor Abiola Awosika. Stay with us.